November 8, 2021. The freezing forests of the Kuznica border crossing in Poland became the staging ground for an unprecedented form of invisible warfare. Over 20,000 desperate people were not merely seeking a new life, they were actively deployed as strategic instruments to fracture a continent from the inside out. This was a masterclass in modern hybrid strategy, turning human hope into a geopolitical battering ram. In this video, we are going to expose the shocking reality of how hostile states are weaponizing human lives to destabilize their geopolitical rivals. We will trace the origins of this crisis back to a single fabricated intelligence report that triggered a chain reaction, eventually leading to state-run airlines flying unsuspecting migrants directly to the gates of Europe. You will discover exactly how this calculated operation works and what it means for the future of global security. The roots of this modern crisis do not begin at a border fence in Eastern Europe, but inside a quiet interrogation room in Germany. In 1999, an Iraqi defector named Rafid Ahmed Alwan arrived in Europe seeking asylum. The German intelligence agency, the Bundesnachrichtendienst, began questioning him about the inner workings of the Iraqi regime. Alwan realized very quickly that his value as an informant was his only guarantee of safety. So he invented a spectacular story. He claimed that Iraq possessed highly advanced mobile biological laboratories designed to evade satellite detection. "Are you absolutely certain about these mobile units?" the German intelligence operative asked, leaning over the table and studying the defector carefully. "They are heavily disguised and constantly shifting locations," Alwan replied smoothly, knowing this story was exactly what his handlers wanted to hear. "You will never find them on a satellite image." This single piece of false intelligence, provided by a man codenamed Curveball, was passed to American agencies. Despite numerous internal warnings about the reliability of the source, this fabricated narrative became the central justification for the invasion of Iraq in 2003. The operation systematically dismantled the regional power structure, creating a massive power vacuum. The collapse of the Iraqi state ignited a fierce conflict that spilled across borders, ultimately providing the spark for the devastating civil war in Syria that began in 2011. Over 12 million citizens were displaced rapidly, creating a massive wave of human desperation that would soon be directed toward the European continent. Human trafficking cartels immediately realized the financial potential of this chaos. They established complex smuggling networks, charging exorbitant fees to guide people across perilous routes into the European Union. The Mediterranean Sea and the Balkan routes became highly lucrative corridors for organized crime. "How much to get my family to Germany?" a desperate father asked a cartel operative in a shadowy cafe in Erbil. $10,000 up front, the smuggler answered, sliding a fake passport across the table. "We get you to the coast, but the sea crossing is entirely on you." This initiated the Great European Migration Crisis of 2015, severely testing the unity and infrastructure of the continent. But soon, hostile nation-states watched the political turmoil unfolding in Europe and noticed something far more valuable than illegal profits. They saw a strategic vulnerability. They realized that Western democracies were highly sensitive to sudden demographic shifts, and that migration could be used as a non-kinetic weapon to paralyze their adversaries without firing a single shot. The strategy evolved from opportunistic smuggling into state-sponsored hybrid warfare. By 2021, the European Union had placed heavy economic sanctions on the government of Belarus. President Alexander Lukashenko did not retaliate with military force. Instead, his government orchestrated a sophisticated logistical operation to funnel thousands of undocumented migrants directly to the borders of NATO member states. Belarus completely bypassed the traditional human trafficking cartels and made the state the primary trafficker. It was the geopolitical equivalent of a malicious hacker exploiting a bug in a computer system, except instead of lines of code, they were using human beings to crash the operating system of the European Union. The state-owned airline Belavia began scheduling extra flights from cities like Baghdad, Erbil, and Damascus directly into the capital city of Minsk. Simultaneously, travel agencies across the Middle East, secretly backed by the Belarusian state, started offering specialized European transit packages. You just board a direct flight to Minsk, and from there it is a short walk into Poland, the travel agent explained to a group of young men looking for a way out. There are no dangerous boats and no hidden trucks. Once these individuals arrived in Minsk on legitimate tourist visas, the Belarusian authorities loaded them onto state-chartered buses. They drove them directly to the dense, freezing forests along the Polish and Lithuanian borders. The migrants were given tools and explicit instructions on how to breach the European defenses. Walk straight through the trees and do not stop until you see the fence, the Belarusian border guard instructed, handing a pair of heavy wire cutters to a young man. "But what if the Polish guards send us back?" the man asked, shivering in the freezing temperatures. "You do not come back," the guard warned, stepping back into his vehicle. "There is no return journey from here." This calculated move created an unprecedented standoff. Thousands of people were suddenly trapped in the freezing forests, wedged between Polish forces refusing entry and Belarusian security personnel violently preventing any retreat. The objective was never to help these people find a better life. The goal was to force European nations into a moral and political crisis, forcing them to either abandon their human rights commitments or accept a destabilizing influx of undocumented arrivals. But here is where things get crazy. This tactic was not just limited to the freezing forests of Eastern Europe. A similar operation was unfolding miles away, orchestrated by a completely different global player. Russia began utilizing the exact same strategy on the southern flanks of Europe. By establishing a strong presence in eastern Libya and backing local strongmen, Russian operatives facilitated the mass movement of undocumented migrants across the Mediterranean Sea. They deliberately pushed these massive waves of people toward Italy. It was a highly coordinated effort to overwhelm southern European infrastructure and create political chaos in Rome. The strategy is terrifyingly simple. You just flood the zone, strain the resources, and watch the target nation tear itself apart from the inside. So what does this mean for the future of Europe? The consequences of this instrumentalization are profound and deeply damaging to the social fabric of the continent. First, the sheer volume of sudden arrivals heavily strains public resources, housing, and social services, creating deep resentment among the local populations. Second, this intense pressure directly fuels the rapid rise of right-wing political movements. When citizens feel that their national borders are compromised and their security is threatened, they naturally gravitate toward leaders who promise strict, uncompromising security measures. This leads to severe political polarization, making it nearly impossible for governments to pass unified legislation. Third, the chaotic and overwhelmed integration process often leaves many new arrivals marginalized and living in isolated communities. This isolation unfortunately becomes fertile ground for Islamic radicalization, as extremist recruiters target individuals who feel alienated and rejected by their host countries. And finally, the massive influx of undocumented individuals provides perfect cover for transnational criminal organizations to expand their operations. With law enforcement overwhelmed by border security duties, there is a noticeable rise in criminality and gang-related activities in major European cities. As European nations scramble to reinforce their borders with steel and sophisticated surveillance, the architects of this strategy sit comfortably in their capitals, watching the political fabric of their rivals slowly unravel. The most effective weapon of the 21st century is not a stealth fighter or a digital virus. It is the desperation of a human being searching for a better life. Thanks for watching this video. For similar stories, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.